Nobody was laughing. That was the first thing you noticed. In a clubhouse that has learned, over the course of a long and demanding season, how to carry pressure without letting it show, nobody was laughing. Freddie Freeman was furious. Not the kind of furious that comes out loud. Not the kind that gets captured on a sideline microphone or turns into a clip that runs on loop for 3 days. The kind that sits behind the eyes. The kind that makes a man's jaw tighten just slightly when he thinks nobody is watching. The kind that, in a room full of professional athletes who have spent their entire lives learning how to read other people's bodies, is impossible to miss. And at the center of it, as he so often is, in ways both beautiful and complicated, was Shohei Ohtani. He had done something reckless. And the Dodgers were not okay with it. Let's start with Dave Roberts. Because the moment Roberts' demeanor shifted, the entire temperature of the room changed with it. That is what it means to be a manager at this level. Your face is a weather system. Your posture is a forecast. When you walk into a space with a certain energy, the people around you don't need to be told what it means. They feel it before you say a word. Roberts walked in with that energy today. The easy looseness that he sometimes carries, the look of a man who has seen enough baseball to know that most things work themselves out, was gone. What replaced it was something more direct. More immediate. The look of a man who had just been told something he did not want to hear and had already decided how he felt about it. Don't mess around. That was what he said. Not loudly. Not with the kind of theatrical force that turns a manager's speech into a motivational poster. He said it the way you say something when you mean it completely and need no additional emphasis. Flat. Clear. Final. The room heard it. The room understood it. And somewhere in that room, Shohei Ohtani heard it too. To understand what Ohtani did, you have to understand what this period of the season means for the Dodgers. This is not May. This is not a stretch of games where the standings have room to breathe and the decisions carry a slightly longer margin for error. Every game right now lands with a weight that the schedule doesn't fully communicate. Every series carries implications that reach beyond the series itself. Every decision made about a player's body, a pitcher's workload, a hitter's approach, every single one of those decisions is being made with October in mind. That is the context in which Ohtani made his move. And that is why Freeman's reaction was not an overreaction. It was the reaction of a man who understands context. Who has lived inside the machinery of a championship-caliber team long enough to know that individual boldness and team architecture are not always the same thing. Who loves Ohtani, genuinely, visibly, in the way that teammates love each other when they have been through real things together, but who also knows that love is not the same as agreement. What Ohtani did pushed against the plan. And in a team built as carefully as this one, pushing against the plan is not a small thing. The story of his return begins earlier than today. It begins in the quiet conversations that happen between players and medical staff, between managers and front office personnel, between the people who build the plan and the people who are asked to trust it. It begins in the weeks before Ohtani stepped back onto a mound in a meaningful capacity, in the careful calibration of workload and rest and preparation that makes a two-way player's schedule look less like a baseball calendar and more like a surgical procedure. Everything had been mapped out. Everything had been discussed. The innings, the at-bats, the days of rest, the days of work. The Dodgers had not stumbled into this plan. They had built it deliberately, the way you build something you cannot afford to break. And Ohtani had agreed to it. That is the part that made today's move so difficult to process. It wasn't that he had acted out of selfishness. Nobody in that building believed that. Ohtani does not carry selfishness in any recognizable form. What he carries, what makes him both extraordinary and occasionally impossible to manage, is a competitive instinct so powerful that it sometimes outpaces the structure built around it. He saw an opportunity. He took it. Without asking. And that, in a room where the plan is everything, was the reckless move that changed the temperature of the day. Freeman found out the way most of his teammates found out. Not from Ohtani directly. Not from a team meeting or a formal announcement. From the kind of sideways information that travels through a clubhouse the way weather moves through a valley, suddenly and completely, without warning. He went still when he heard it. That stillness lasted only a moment. But it was the kind of moment that people in the room remembered afterward. Because Freeman in stillness is not Freeman at rest. It is Freeman processing something at full speed on the inside while the outside goes quiet. It is the version of him that precedes a decision. The decision, when it came, was not a public one. He didn't make a speech. He didn't call a team meeting. He walked directly to where Ohtani was and said what needed to be said between the two of them before anyone else made it into something larger. What was said in that conversation has not been shared in full. Probably it won't be. These are the moments that teams protect not because they are shameful but because they are real, and real things lose something when they are turned into content. But the people nearby described the same thing afterward. Freeman's voice was low. His eyes were direct. And Ohtani, who does not lower his gaze easily, who carries himself with a quiet confidence that rarely wavers, listened. He listened the way you listen when someone you respect is telling you something you already know is true. Roberts addressed it more directly in the private conversations that followed. Don't mess around. Those 3 words were the public surface of something much longer and much more specific that happened behind closed doors. Roberts is not a man who leads with anger. He has managed enough personalities, survived enough seasons, navigated enough impossible situations to know that anger rarely builds anything useful. But he is also not a man who softens what needs to be said when the stakes are high enough. And today, the stakes were high enough. He sat across from Ohtani and laid it out plainly. Not as a punishment. Not as a lecture. As a statement of reality from a manager who needed his most important player to understand something clearly before it became a problem that couldn't be undone. We built this plan for a reason. Every decision we've made about your workload has been made with one goal. Don't take that away from us. Don't take it away from yourself. Ohtani sat with that. He didn't push back. He didn't defend the move with the kind of reasoning that sounds logical in isolation but misses the larger picture. He sat with it the way a person sits with something when they know, underneath the competitive instinct that drove the decision, that the person across from them is right. Roberts saw that. And the conversation moved forward. Here is the thing about Shohei Ohtani that makes moments like this so layered. He is not reckless in the way that word usually implies. He is not careless. He does not make decisions without thought. What he is, what he has always been, from the earliest days of his career when people were still debating whether the two-way experiment was even serious, is someone who believes in himself at a frequency that most human beings simply do not operate on. That belief is the source of everything remarkable about him. It is the reason he stood in the batter's box against Randy Vasquez and swung at the first pitch without hesitation. It is the reason he walked back to the mound after hitting that home run and shut down a lineup that had just watched him do something impossible. It is the reason he exists in baseball at all, in the form that he exists, doing the things that make opposing managers say things like "this is too unfair" into microphones at press conferences. But that same belief, the unshakable, almost structural confidence in what his body can do, is also what made today's move feel reckless to the people around him. Because they are not just protecting a player. They are protecting a belief system. They are protecting the proof that this kind of player is possible, that this kind of season is possible, that the thing they are building together can survive contact with October. And when Ohtani pushed against the plan, he pushed against all of that. Not maliciously. But completely. The commotion inside the Dodgers was unprecedented in the way that most things involving Ohtani are unprecedented. This is not a team that fractures easily. These are not players who mistake one difficult day for a collapse in team chemistry. They have been through too much together. They have sat in too many rooms after too many hard losses, made too many adjustments, trusted the process too many times for one reckless move to undo what has been carefully built. But unprecedented does not mean unimportant. The fact that Freeman, steady, experienced, beloved Freeman, was visibly furious meant something. The fact that Roberts dropped his easy manner and replaced it with 3 words that left no room for interpretation meant something. The fact that the clubhouse went quiet in a way that everyone noticed but nobody announced meant something. It meant this team takes the plan seriously. It meant they take Ohtani seriously, not just as a talent, but as a responsibility they share collectively. His health is not his alone. His availability in October is not a private matter between him and the medical staff. It belongs to every person in that clubhouse who has adjusted their approach, shortened their rest, trusted the larger structure because they believed the larger structure was being protected. When Ohtani tested that structure, they felt it. All of them. By the time the evening arrived, something had settled. Not resolved, settled. There is a difference. Resolution implies the thing is finished. Settlement implies the thing has found its level, that the water has stopped moving, that the room can breathe again even if the conversation is not entirely over. Freeman had said what he needed to say. Roberts had said what needed to be said. Ohtani had heard both. And the Dodgers, as they almost always do, because this is what championship cultures learn how to do, had absorbed the commotion and converted it into something quieter and more useful. Focus. They were playing baseball tonight. The Yankees were still in town. The standings were still what they were. The plan was still the plan, adjusted now at the edges by what had happened today, but intact in the ways that mattered most. And Ohtani was still Ohtani. That is both the most obvious and the most important thing to say. The reckless move did not change who he is. Freeman's fury did not diminish him. Roberts' shift in demeanor did not reduce him. If anything, and this is the part that is hardest to explain to someone who has not watched him closely, moments like this seem to clarify him. Seem to strip away everything that isn't essential and leave only what is. A competitor. An unprecedented one. One who pushes against limits not because he doesn't understand them but because some part of him, the part that swings at first pitches and roars on the mound after double plays, simply cannot accept them as final. Roberts was asked about it afterward. He paused before answering. Not the long pause of someone searching for words. The short pause of someone deciding how much of the truth to share in public. Shohei wants to win, he said. We all want to win. Sometimes that looks the same. Sometimes it looks different. Today it looked a little different. He left it there. He didn't need to say more. Because everyone in the room, every reporter, every camera, every person watching from the outside, already understood what a little different meant when Dave Roberts said it with that expression on his face. It meant today was real. It meant the Dodgers are human, complicated, occasionally combustible, and still, underneath all of it, pointed in exactly the same direction. Just don't mess around getting there. That part, Roberts meant completely.